This is Friday, July 24th, and there's a pretty good story brewing. The Fed meets next week. Nobody expects them to lift off from zero at next week's meeting. The Fed has been warning now for almost a year that we're going to lift off. We're going to lift off. Hold us back. We're going to lift off. It looks with every passing hour as though the incoming economic data, especially from overseas, makes any thought of the Fed raising interest rates ridiculous. And it's an extreme thing for me to feel that way, but that's the way it looks. The Fed wants to lift off to begin to distance itself from quantitative easing. We have no prior experience with quantitative easing. The only thing we know about it is that it's extreme and that we should probably retreat from it as soon as we're able. The U.S. economy is, this is not doom and gloom, the U.S. economy is doing okay, and maybe okay enough for the Fed to justify lifting off from zero and then wait maybe kind of a long while and then try it again. But the Fed's forecasts have been much more aggressive. The Fed's forecasts took another leg today after I wrote the copy that's next to this video. A Fed staffer by accident released the internal Fed staff forecast from last month, which ordinarily is supposed to sit in a mayonnaise jar for 5 years. And the forecast that's been released bears no relationship to reality, which is alarming. I'm a fan of the Fed, but to have the Fed off in fantasy space is nervous-making. And it posits an economy growing much faster than it is. And the Fed has been silent on a companion issue, which is its forecasts going all the way back to 2007 have been wrong, all of them. And they've all been wrong high side. Mortgage rates, long-term rates actually came down this weekend, last week. The chart looks as though we may have passed the interest rate high for the year. The Fed's forecast document says that a year from now, mortgage rates will be about 5 3/4 as the Fed tightens into an improving economy. Meanwhile, the flood of news in from overseas, we know Japan's a wreck and totally dependent on quantitative easing continuing just to stay above water. We know Europe is a wreck and it just began quantitative easing in January. China's formal announcements of its economy, now no one believes it. Nobody. And that's a bad place to be in, where when you become a laughingstock. We've got a lot of other data about China from outside China that says that its economy is almost at a standstill. Now all of that's overseas and it's not here. Business is pretty good here, but there's no acceleration in the economy. The fundamental belief in the business cycle is that we either accelerate upwards or we accelerate downward, and it's the Fed's job to lean against the acceleration. The economy is sort of pooping along at 2.5%, maybe, although all of the new inbound data is now weaker than it was 2 months ago. Theoretically, we should be snapping forward now after an artificially weak winter caused by bad weather. We're not. We're coming up a little above 2% and look for all the world as though we're stalling out. Weakness overseas, oil prices are back under $50. Gold is in complete free fall, and with it, all industrial metals. Copper is now priced where it was in 2009, and 2009 was a very, very bad year. The overseas trouble means that everything that we import is going to get cheaper, which means there's no inflation. There's certainly no inflation from overseas. Oil prices falling, there's no inflation. Only piece in the economy that looks as though it could be overheating is the fall in the unemployment rate. But about like Chinese statistics today, the insistence that a low unemployment rate means that employers will soon begin to increase wages in competition with each other for scarce labor ain't happening. It's a very strange moment. To have the most authoritative voice in the economy is the Fed chairman. Janet Yellen is a bright lady. She knows everything that I'm saying now, but they're boxed. And I'm not sure what it means. But I feel pretty good that we're not going to have to deal with some rocket in interest rates from the Fed or from the market, either one anytime soon. And I do hope some midsummer beach entertainment in listening to what the Fed says to try to get out of the box that it's in. The next really big data is the next round of employment data, which is for the month of July. And that data is not next Friday, it's the Friday afterwards. The betting for Fed liftoff is now either September or December. But boy, this week, the data that went by, there are more and more bets that none of this makes any sense at all. This makes it entertaining. Do have a good weekend.